continue our look at the Gospel of Luke, but we drop to chapter 13, verse 10. This is one of, I believe, 5 stories of healing on the Sabbath. Now, Jesus was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath, and just then there appeared a woman with a spirit that had crippled her for 18 years. She was bent over and quite unable to stand up straight. When Jesus saw her, he called her over and said, "Woman, you are set free from your ailment." When he laid his hands on her, immediately she stood up straight and began praising God. But the leader of the synagogue was indignant. Jesus had cured on the Sabbath, and he kept saying to the crowd, "There are 6 days which work ought to be done. Come on those days and be cured, not on the Sabbath day." But the Lord answered, "You hypocrites! Does not each of you on the Sabbath untie his ox or donkey from the manger and lead it away to get water? Ought not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan has bound for 18 long years, be set free from this bondage on the Sabbath day?" When he said this, all his opponents were put to shame. The entire crowd was rejoicing at all the wonderful things he was doing. The reading ends here. It struck me that our readings this morning deal with life from youth in Jeremiah's terms to 18 long years of suffering of an adult woman, and Psalm 71, one of the few biblical pieces of material that deals explicitly with old age. We didn't read the entire psalm. Let me just add a few more verses to it. The psalmist says, "Do not cast me off in my time of old age. Do not forsake me when my strength is spent." He continues, "I will hope continually and will praise you yet more and more. From my youth you have taught me. Still I proclaim your wondrous deeds. So even to old age and gray hair, O God, do not forsake me, until I proclaim your might to all generations yet to come. You have had me see many troubles and calamities. You will revive me yet again. From the depths of the earth you will bring me up again. You will increase my honor and comfort me once again." We have an adult baptism today. In our tradition, we baptize people at any age, from infancy all the way through life. At any stage of life, we welcome people into the community of God. Baptism is a remarkable moment because it turns not only a new page, but a new chapter in human life, one where we set aside and bury our past and look toward a new future, a future with God. This is a remarkable thing because we use the simplest but most vital of the compounds of nature, water, as a deep symbol that in a way comes up against our reading at Hebrews. This simple act of water unites us with God. This water is a symbol of being drowned. It's also a symbol of coming out of birth water. It's a symbol of God nurturing us as children and all the way through our lives. Here, God condescends to let us see and feel the waters of God's presence, the waters of God's continuing presence. Our worship today, as Fanny Crosby said, is a foretaste of glory divine. With the simplest of acts, God opens up a new way for us. Our worship is preparation, is the entryway into the presence of God, that tells us that God breaks open to us in the midst of time and space, not only in worship, but every day. Worship gives us access to God. The sacraments provide us a way of being touched by God, who, as Hebrews reminds us, is far beyond this mere physical plane. In worship and in the sacraments, we are connected with God, with the angels, the saints past and present, who do create what we heard last week, the great cloud of witnesses that encompass our lives. We are not made to be easily familiar with the divine. That grows and goes past all we can imagine. But instead of shrinking back from that presence, we can move forward to embrace it, even as we approach God with reverence and awe. In our tradition, the goal of worship is not merely entertainment. We do not consume worship merely as some commodity. This is an encounter with God. To hear God's voice, to be touched with the baptismal water, is to be transformed. It does not leave us as we are, but puts us on the road of how God envisions and sees us. And we are aware of the impermanence of all human life, the fragility and vulnerability of all human life. And we bow in awe before the permanence, might, and splendor of our God. Baptism touches us. For many of us, from when we were born all the way through our lives, and continues even into heaven. As I said, the readings touch on youth in Jeremiah and age in Psalm 71. I want to work with this a little bit for the rest of the sermon. As you've heard me before, I've been long interested in the work of the psychologist Erik Erikson, who sees life as moving through stages, as tensions that we carry deep within us all our lives, from the very beginning of life, torn between trust and mistrust, shame and initiative, doubt and power. And as we grow older, we start to forge an identity out of those different shards of genes and experience. And we grow in industry and learning about relationship and generating activity, work, and a legacy. All of these have virtues and vices associated with them. They always exist in the deep background of our character. As we grow older, age challenges every one of the stages we've moved through, because those tensions persist. Can we trust our children to take care of us when we grow too fragile? My lovely younger daughter put it well. My mother had dementia, and Jocelyn was probably only about 13, and she said, "Dad, don't worry. You'll be well taken care of if you get like Grandma Crowley. Just know that that will mean that you'll live in Portland, Maine, and I'll live in San Diego." Old age challenges every one of our stages, every one of our commitments. It always exists both with eyes, it's Janus-faced. It looks back to the past, sometimes with regrets, sometimes with wonders about the road not taken. I think that's one of the things that draws people to high school reunions, to encounter an early love, to wonder how my life would have looked. Often when we do that, we look only at the positive. Oh, if only I would have married him or her, my life would have been a bed of roses. Memory erases reality. Garth Brooks had a song on unanswered prayers that thanked God for unanswered prayers, because in his song, someone encountered that first love 30 years down the road, and he was on his knees. Thank God I didn't marry her. We can look at the road not taken as open. We can continue with the psalmist also to look at the future with our eyes wide open. My late lamented pastoral care teacher, Donald Capps, added a ninth stage to Erickson's work, and he talked about old age as a tension between what can I continue to control, where can I be independent, what do I need to do to let go, what do I need to do to hold on to. He thought that as we grow older, we both learn to accept our limitations in wisdom, but that we always push up against them. We adapt to the limitations we face with creativity. Why? Because we can look back at what we've gone through and survive. That we're constantly in a struggle against looking at our life as a whole with our eyes open and despair. That tension of wanting to give it all up and saying, what's the use? There's nothing I can do. And growing inward and bitter. He got fascinated with artists who could, in the old days, draw photographic representations of different scenes, a landscape or a domestic scene. But as their hands failed, or as their eyesight failed, they continued to create, but in a different way. The colors became softer because that's all their eyes could see. There was less detail because their hand couldn't produce it anymore. Still, they produced their work. Still, they were creative, even with their limitations. Age doesn't have to be only a downward slide. It continues to be a continued forward movement. Yes, time can take on a different quality. Past, present, and future sometimes become more indistinct. Or sometimes the past takes on more power because we can't remember what we had for lunch yesterday. Or it creates a new sense of urgency. I have a short span of life yet left, or as President Clinton said recently, we live in a world that has more yesterdays than tomorrows. When you think about it, Jesus always had this sense. He died around 30, and maybe that's what propelled his energy and gospel mission. Jesus lived under the gun of short time to live. And instead of allowing that woman to have to suffer yet one more day, 18 years was plenty, today's the day, she is healed. In baptism, we say, not one more day of living burdened by the past. Not one more day should we wait until we live into a new future. As we grow older, we start to get concerned about the legacy we leave. How has the world been touched? I like the restaurant Edwardsville, Bella Milano, so I made probably the grave mistake of signing on to a retirement seminar there this week. They promised that we needed to be there early at 11:15 and that at 11:30 precisely would start and we would be done by 12:05. 1:05 came and I was afraid I was going to die before I got my free lunch. But everybody there was concerned about legacy. Everybody there was concerned, are there ways for me to leave a legacy for my family? Are there ways for me to leave a legacy so my spouse can be well taken care of in case I die before my spouse? How do I handle this? And everybody at the table had regrets. Why didn't I start investing younger? Why didn't I start thinking about this till now? Legacy shows up in other ways. Some of us, as we grow older, act as mentors and find a place to share our wisdom and experience. I think of Mr. Rook's core group. It's a group of retired executives that offer training and advice and coaching to people who are starting or are in the midst of a business career. They shared their experience and wisdom with people who are starting a business, on the road to a business. How do I grow? What do I do? What do I need to be concerned with? The Men's Bible Group will start next month on Monday morning. Folks who use the Kerygma series year in and year out, they're almost all older men. And they use that time not only to engage with Scripture, but to share their thoughts, their wisdom as well. I'm not romantic about growing older. It is a decline. And a lot of us, as we grow older, are constantly grumpy or even bitter. Cap says that our great resource in facing the decline of age is humor. And I have one of his books, Laughter Ever After, and we'll share some of the jokes there that he argues is more than a placebo, but a virtue for helping us face the difficulties of age. Guy goes to the doctor for his annual physical. The doctor told him to get dressed. I'm afraid your condition is a lot worse than last year. The best thing for you to do is to give up liquor and smoking and all that rich food that you eat at fancy restaurants. And you should stop seeing all those young women who keep you out until old hours. And the patient thought for a moment and asked, so what's the next option? Doctor gets a guy for his annual physical, and the patient asks, tell me, doctor, how long am I going to live? The doctor said, don't worry, you'll probably live till you're 80. But doctor, I am 80. See, what did I tell you? Just one more. Guy goes to the doctor, comes back home. How did your visit at the doctor's office go today, honey? Not good. The doctor told me I have to take the medication he gave me for the rest of my life. Well, what's so bad about that? She said. He only gave me 4 pills. Last week I heard on National Public Radio Krista Trippett's show On Being with a woman named Joanne Macy, who's translated the German poet Rainer Maria Rilke's work. I'll close with a quote from Rilke as he was facing age. This time, as it passes, really destroy? Can this heart that belongs to God be torn from God by circumstance? Can we ever be severed from childhood's deep promise? I've come to see that the knowledge of impermanence that haunts our days is their very fragrance. Kay has always lived her life in the presence of God. She begins a formal life with God this morning. All of us, young or old, have a chance to reaffirm our commitment to the Christian walk through time this morning as we reaffirm our baptismal promises. Know this, God is with us, as the psalmist says, from the time we're born to old age and gray hair. God is a constant companion, our refuge and strength, young or old. We know this in the felt sign of baptism.